this thing with the money, of making money, and of how much it costs and everything like that, is something I talk about now with the students incessantly because I really think that we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about this. And the point is, if there's no money out there, the art form will disappear. It'll be like the Baroque recorder, something like that. So it's a major crisis. And of course, it's always been supply and demand. They've always been out of balance since the first caveman put something on the wall. This is now exponential. And I don't know what the answers are going to be to making a living.
Why have people stopped buying music? Has the value of music diminished?
The culture does not interest itself, at least America, it does not interest itself in art. It's peripheral, if anything at all. And of course, as we know, going to Europe has always been the lifeline of jazz because you got paid. And there was an audience, and there was a serious audience, and that went on since the 60s, or even the 50s, right up until the last few years. Now, this kid coming up now who's 13 years old, 14 years old, he's going to say, this is fun. Maybe I could sell it to my uncle. Well, your uncle says, oh, okay, kid, but I'd rather have it for nothing. Oh, why? Well, because everything else is for nothing. It's a preponderance of not paying for anything. And of course, human nature is, if you can give it to me for free, why should I pay for it? And jazz will be a little pocket of a pocket, and it will survive musically because it's so much energy now, especially. But making a living, very difficult. And the upshot is in America, you preface that with going to school for $60,000 a year. That whole system of paying for our education, which you get in Europe, is a different story. They support it. So I think in America, what's the role of government? Defense, health, culture, and I don't know, something else. But those first three, they rule. And I don't see anywhere that you're getting paid for any of those things. We're not going to pay. We're spending money on artillery right as we speak.
Yet when you do live performances, people come out, they pay, they get something from the music. Why the disparity between recorded music and live music?
Well, obviously, if you're in the presence of jazz, there's another interest that's translated to an audience. And it has to be careful with the audience. If you're going to charge them like Birdland, $40 a seat, and then a cover for $20 and a tip, and you're talking about $80 per person to go and hear music. So that means it's a certain population only, and that's true. And in our case, in New York, it's a lot of tourists, still some young people, although they increasingly can't afford the prices. But of course, I played last night at Smalls, and it was, you couldn't walk. I couldn't get through the crowd. So as you say, that's funny that there's a great interest in some ways, and then in other ways, it's completely on desert.
How do musicians navigate this landscape to get people to their music?
Well, I assume social media has a lot to do with it. And it seems if you want to spend 8 hours a day on the computer, seems like you could get, I don't know, I don't have a statistic, but it seems like you have a chance for more interest because you're playing the game that the people are, which is how do you notice something out of the crowd? And social media, which I'm not familiar with, because I've said to myself, or I said to my family, I don't want it in here because it'll take time. I don't have time for FaceTime or Twinkle Twitter, and a Freudian slip. So outside of social media, are we going to go back to putting posters on record stores like we did with Free Life Communication in 1969, 70, giving a concert? We used to split Manhattan up into 3 or 4 parts. Guys would go out at midnight, take flour and water and a poster, and put it up and meet back at 2 in Chinatown. And maybe we attracted 5 extra people who would have come anyway because they're friends of friends. That's the other thing. The friends take up a certain amount, which is nice. Thank God there's a framework there for them to come and enjoy the music when it's not too expensive. That's the caveat. No, we have a really disintegrating situation going on here because if you don't give these kids some way to make money, they'll find another way.
How do musicians position themselves in this jazz world? Do they need to like say, well, I play avant-garde, I play free, I play Brazilian music? What is the I don't know if there's a formula, but what do you suggest for young musicians trying to make their way in the world of jazz?
Well, here's something that you might have related to because you know Sonny Rollins, and this is a Sonny Rollins story. He was known in the 50s for his renditions of what we call ditties, no business like show business, the best things in life are free, uh, sorry with the fringe, songs that other guys didn't touch because they weren't interesting harmonically, basically. There were those tunes that were interesting, like All the Things You Are, Stella by Starlight, Invitation, that were played by musicians because they were a challenge and they sounded good when they were done well. But Sonny was known for that, so he gets an interviewer, and the interviewer says, Mr. Rollins, and he says, I don't know the exact words, why do you play these tunes? And then he looks him straight in the eye and he says, because I can. And boy, if you want to take a ditty, Chic of Araby, you want to hear some playing on some very simple structures, that's, there you go. So what I say to the students, get something that you can own, style-wise, maybe instrumentally. Like I had to stop tenor to get to soprano, closer to soprano. That was a sacrifice I made in 1980. 15 years I followed my muse and got the soprano up to a decent level. You have to own something that you are the man or woman responsible for playing in that manner. I always use this ridiculous metaphor. You can play a triple high C, which doesn't exist, in a flute, and you're in Kazakhstan. Believe me, somebody will need you for a movie score for that one note, if nothing else. Because the guy who does it, or the woman who does it, owns the sound of it, unofficially, but they're so good at it. Like in New York, basically you have top call guys, and then you have about 2 or 3 possible substitutes. And the band made up of substitutes and steady guys or something like that. But there's no scarcity of talent in New York, so that would work. In another town, if you go to Des Moines, Iowa, you're going to have one saxophone player, probably that's about it. Maybe a bass and the drums, maybe an extra bass player. 5 people who are interested in this music. And that's the situation we're in. So, of course, the underlying thing I'm talking about is you got to be in New York to know what I'm talking about. Because in New York, you see the whole scene in one night. You could go three sets. You can see exactly what's going on in America, musically and therefore jazz-wise. And walk out with either your head between your legs or with you screaming about how great I am and I can do this too. So if you own something, you have more of a likelihood of using it and working with it.
How do you help young musicians find their own concept, their own sound?
Well, without getting into it too much, because I did this yesterday for my last class at NYU, I and Richie Byrack, years ago wrote a manifesto about finding oneself in the music. And it ranged from like concentrating on one thing, like I was talking about, one aspect, transcribing yourself instead of Sonny Rollins, transcribe your playing, see what's different and interesting in that playing. Very analytical, be very objective, not subjective. Because when you go and you practice and you're trying to get something going in the practice room, that's complete subjectivity. That's how you feel. But when you get out on a bandstand, not on a bandstand, when you get outside and play in any other circumstances, objectivity means no emotion. Let the emotion come through the bandstand. So there is, I direct people to my website under educational articles, finding oneself. But does that work? To varying degrees, sometimes successful, sometimes not. But it will take 3 to 5 years beyond your learnings, your preliminary years. So you're looking at a 30-year-old guy or girl who can play, who has gone through all this stuff. Now what do they have to do? They have to find a niche. And centralizing their playing in one way will, I think, enhance the possibilities of them finding a niche.
How are today's young musicians different than the ones you worked with 30 or 40 years ago?
Well, in one way, they're not different. They're still looking to jam session. They're still creating things together. You go to any musician's apartment, mostly like 9 out of 10, you're going to see recording equipment and really good sound coming from the equipment and good playing. And this could have been a drummer from Thailand, a flute player from South Africa, and trombone from New York. this mixture of the world cultures is a good thing, positive thing. And musically, it's very positive because jazz had found, look, Baroque music lasted, then it stopped. Romantic style lasted, then it stopped. Rock and roll had its day, and then it morphed into something else. Interaction between the people in different countries and everything like that is kind of a saving grace, I think, for the music. It's one thing that'll keep the music alive. Again, making a living at it, that's another story. So we had to separate the aesthetics from the business. Great playing, great technical playing, not much to say if you're 22 years old, you haven't lived enough to do it. Everybody says, well, they have no feeling. Well, you go back and listen to yourself and tell me what kind of feeling you had. You know what I mean? So I think there's more talent now than ever before. I think it all has to do with the internet and the ability to be able to press a button and see anything from anywhere. And that's a good thing. It's just a good thing. And when I hear some music that the kids are making now, it sounds fantastic. And they're recording in their bedroom. They put a mic up, they got the systems done, everything's getting miniaturized. And it's possible for them to artistically produce in their bedroom or in their living room. Again, does that mean they'll make a living? Not.
No.
So it's a dichotomy going on here, really a big one, a big gulf between making money and making a living and doing this for fun. But by the time you get to 25, 26, 27 years old, fun is turned into like a responsibility that you didn't have when you were going to school. You go to school, you fool around, you play, and network, mostly network, for the ability to be able to know these people on the outside once you all get out there. I see everybody playing with guys and girls from their own generation. We didn't have that. We had playing with the masters. We had jam sessions and everything like that, but the goal for us was to play with Stan Getz or play with Dexter Gordon or play with Miles Davis. And if you got that, you were already in an honored position. But there were a lot more opportunities. The record business was that. There was a thing called the record business. That's completely gone. Even if I say record is not even, if I say CD, I'm not even accurate. The music channel, I don't know what to say. But this gulf between the making a living and making music is, I don't know if it can be reconciled.
What is it about jazz that inspires people and drives them to do the work necessary to play this music?
Individual freedom. Freedom for you to do what they want, supposedly, within this music, within the boundaries of the style you're playing with. Free jazz has different aspects to it than fusion, it's got different aspects to it. It's exciting music. And of course, it have to be there live. That should be understood. It should be that, you don't even talk about whether you like something or not until you go live and sit 5 feet away from John Coltrane, which I did, or anybody, and you get it. Like last night at the Smalls, there was looked like a father and a son and a daughter, or a girlfriend, boyfriend, I don't know, in the front row at Smalls for my son-in-law's band, Willie Rodriguez, and Harry Paz, Leo, Genevieve, and Tamir, a bass player. I happen to know these guys, and I sat in for a tune. But this front row was taken up from a family that I'm sure just came that night. And they were completely transfixed. They're sitting 5 feet away. Jazz is a live music. Classically, you can get away with a big auditorium. But when you do jazz in a big auditorium, it really loses something. And the club thing is also gone because of the economics. They did, like a fund drive for Birdland during the pandemic. They did one for Smalls. There's little buckets in, pails in the buckets in the water. But if you see it live, and you see good jazz, not cocktail music, you have a chance to end up loving it. One thing about jazz, you don't go back. You go forward as far as listening goes. You say, I want more. And you get Louis Armstrong when he was born. This is it's a live music. And without the live aspect, I think it's problematic.